Hello, welcome back everybody. This is the DPP session 4, Eat Well to Prevent T2. So again, our little disclaimer here that because this is a recording, the CDC does require you to have direct interaction with your lifestyle coach after each session or with each session. So after listening to the recording, schedule a call with your lifestyle coach and make sure you're able to review the session with them. So for today's session about eating well to prevent T2, we will talk specifically about how to eat well, how to build a healthy meal. We'll talk about what a healthy plate is, and then we'll discuss the food groups and of course give you a chance to make a new action plan.
Okay, so talking about how to eat well in one session is a lot, a mouthful, so to speak, but we'll do our best. So there'll probably be a lot of questions, but this is just a very broad overview. So yeah, so we'll just run with it. So we're first going to talk about how to eat well to lower your risk of type 2 diabetes. First of all, you want to choose items that are low in calories. And remember, we talked about calories the last time. And so a calorie is something that we take in food and beverages. You see it on the nutrition facts label, and it tells you how many calories are in different things. And we also use them with your body functions like breathing, thinking, digesting, also physical activity. And so those are one way the calories are going in, and the other ways the calories are going out. So yeah, so that's what a calorie is. And that means, to lose weight, you have to have a calorie deficit. You have to have less calories in than you are putting out. And theoretically, if you want to lose 1 pound a week, you need to cut 3,500 calories each week. And you might be thinking, holy smokes, that's a lot. But if you divide that by 7, that's 500 calories a day. So, and when you look at some things that are high in calories, a lot of times if you make just adjustments in those, it's actually easier than you think. And so the tips to do this, to cut that 500 calories a day, is to choose foods that are low in fat, low in sugar, because those are kind of the calories that you don't need as much of. At the same time, you want to look for foods that are high in fiber and water, and also high in vitamins, minerals, and protein. And we'll go in more detail what that means as we move along. So let's start with the fat one. So why would you want to choose items that are low in fat? Well, fat is high in calories. Plus, fats that are solid at room temperature can harm your heart. So the main thing to know about fat is it has about more than twice as many calories per weight than proteins and carbohydrate foods. So it's very, what I call calorically dense. So if you think about like a tablespoon of butter and how much space that takes up, that has as many calories as in a slice and a half of bread. And so there you see just that small tablespoon of butter has the equal amount of calories as something with a much, much higher volume. And so by making adjustments in that, lowering that fat intake, you are really cutting the calories a lot in a very simple way. The next thing is sugar. So why would you want to choose items that are low in sugar? Well, sweet foods can be high in calories, although they're not as high as fatty foods. A tablespoon of white sugar has about 50 calories. A tablespoon of butter has about 100 calories, so about twice as much. But sweet foods can make your blood sugar go up, and that's one thing we want to prevent. At the same time, you want to choose items that are high in fiber and in water. Does anyone fiber is kind of a funny thing because a lot of people think, oh, I know it's something I'm supposed to have, but where do you get it? Fiber is basically a type of carbohydrate that passes through your body without being digested. So what that means is, like, if you eat, say, for example, a carrot, that's a carbohydrate. So it's a good carbohydrate. And but there's fiber that is within that carbohydrate, and that fiber basically just goes through your system, and that's what creates, makes you a healthy digestion. It creates bulk in the stool. But the big thing is when you're losing weight, and this is the real secret, is when you have a higher fiber diet, it creates a feeling of fullness without the extra calories that you've just removed from the excess sugar and fat. So it's a great way to kind of think, wow, I'm just not getting that fullness and I'm feeling because I took out all that fat and sugar. But when you add the fiber, you're going to feel that sense of fullness. And then the other thing is about water. And so I always think of fiber and water, they kind of go together. Because like fiber, water fills you up without calories. There's no calories in it at all. And if you think about a high fiber food, when it's in the presence of water, it's going to move through your system and expand in your gut to make you feel full much better if it's accompanied by water. Finally, you want to choose items that are high in vitamins, minerals, and protein. The reason you want to do this is because your body needs them to be healthy, and many of us don't get enough of them. And you think, well, geez, how am I going to get all those things? And once you see how to eat, all this will be part of, all these 4 things will fit into a healthy diet naturally. You won't have to think about it, but it's just more by the food choices you are making. So, so let's turn this around. So to prevent type 2 diabetes that we talked about are the things you want to limit, which are foods that are high in calories, fat, and sugar. And things you want to have more of are fiber and water, and minerals and vitamins and protein.
Okay, so we will now put those ideas into practice. And you see here, we're going to talk about how to build a healthy meal. And this photo on the right is a little preview of what we'll talk about. So we're going to turn to our participant guide on page 3, and it should be titled A Healthy Meal. Let me get that pulled up for you guys. Okay, here we go. So this picture shows a healthy meal, and it's based on the Create Your Plate idea from the American Diabetes Association. So you can see here that half of the plate is made up of non-starchy veggies. So you see that here with the salad. And so non-starchy veggies could be the salad, it could be broccoli, lettuce, peppers. And then a quarter of the plate is going to be grains or starchy foods. So that could be potatoes or oatmeal. So here on this picture, we have potatoes. And then another quarter of your plate is protein. So that would be chicken, lean meat, or fish. Here we obviously have some chicken. And then you can also have a small amount of dairy according to this Create Your Plate idea. And so they do have a cup of milk here, but we also recognize that some folks have issues with dairy, and that's maybe not the best choice for everyone. And then we also have listed, you could have a small amount of fruit. So that could be 1 apple, half a banana, or half a cup of berries. So here they have an apple in this picture. And then for drinks, you would want to drink something that is either low in calories or no calories. So that could be water, sparkling water, or coffee without sugar. And if we continue down, and of course you can see you'll have all this information listed here for you on page 3 of your participant guide. And then continuing down to page 4, I'll walk you through this exercise. So we're just going to number each of these based on what category or which food group they're in. So I'll just start at the top left over here. It looks like we have some milk and some yogurt. So that would be labeled as a number 4, dairy foods. In the top middle, it looks like we have some mixed veggies, maybe a salad, some asparagus. So that's going to be number 1, non-starchy veggies. The top right, we have some coffee. It looks like maybe iced tea. So that would be number 6, drink. In the middle right, it looks like we have some black beans, chicken, and salmon. So that would be labeled number 3 for protein foods. The bottom right is mixed fruit and strawberries and a banana. So that would be labeled 5 for fruit. And then on the left, we have, it looks like potatoes, maybe some corn, I think, and then some breads and grains. So that's going to be labeled number 2 for grains and starchy foods. So this kind of gives us a little bit of an introduction into the food groups, and Sharon's going to take us even farther into that.
Great. All right. So Angie mentioned the word non-starchy veggies, and the reason we call it that is because there's also starchy veggies, and those are typically things like corn and potatoes, sweet potatoes, winter squash, and peas. Non-starchy veggies, this is where you're going to get all that fiber and actually water. You get a lot in there too, plus vitamins and minerals. So you're getting all those things on that previous list in these kinds of foods. And they're so important. And they're also super low in calories. And that's why on that plate, we have them taking up half the space on that plate. So whether that's a salad or you have a salad on the side and some cooked vegetables on the plate, it really doesn't matter, but you want to just think of your total volume of on that plate, of half of it to be non-starchy vegetables. And so here's a list of some typical non-starchy vegetables that we eat. I think the rule of thumb for most non-starchy vegetables, and it's not totally everything, but most of them tend to grow out of the ground and grow up. So they're green. They kind of have this upward kind of energy. So that's one way to know if something is a non-starchy vegetable. And remember, they take up half your plate. Another thing to remember is that frozen veggies are just as good for you as fresh veggies, as long as they're just frozen veggies without the added sauces and things like that. You want to try to limit canned vegetables. They're a little bit lower in vitamin and minerals, but they're also can be very high in sodium. So if you need vegetables that you're going to have stored for a long time, the frozen is actually a little better bet. All right, now we'll go look at grains and starchy vegetables, starchy foods. So as you see here, we've got things like tortillas, cereal bread, beans, rice. So here we see those starchy vegetables, corn, peas, and then further down, potato, pumpkin, yams. But these are all considered grains and starchy foods. And these you want to take up about 25 or a quarter of your plate. Now, typically we put more of this on, but if you're trying to lose weight, keeping this to 25% is really going to help you reach your goals much quicker. And you also want to make at least half of your grains whole grains. Whole grains mean, like you see at the top here, they have 100% corn, 100% whole grain cereal, 100% whole wheat, as opposed to white bread, white rice, things like that. So really kind of aim to get those, because that whole grain is going to give you that fiber, which we're also looking to add to. You also want to look for grains that are low in fat and sugar. And the, things like you want to avoid are things like sweetened cereals or, pastries, those kind of carbohydrates, grains are really not something you want to choose. They're like a one-off, but not something you want to have every day. Okay, so now let's move on to protein foods. And just like the starchy or grain foods, these also take up 25% of the plate. And a lot of people think, whoa, that's not very much. But when you're having all those vegetables, it really is actually plenty of protein. Now, to keep with that fat guideline of limiting fat, ideally you want to choose proteins that are low in fat. So things like eggs and fish and seafood, cooked in a way that's not something high in fat. Lean meats, and here they mentioned lean ground beef, chicken and turkey without the skin, pork loin, also bison is another good one here. Nuts, you want to limit, they are high in fat, but not that kind of fat that it affects our arteries. So these are some options. There's some others. If you're vegetarian, the beans could fit in here, the legumes, and so they're kind of like a hybrid. They can be a protein and a starchy food. So, and those are actually a wonderful source of protein as well. All right, let's move on to dairy foods. So as Angie said, many people do have something called lactose intolerance or lactose sensitivity. And typically what happens is if you have some dairy food, you might get a kind of a bloated, crampy stomach, or you might get some diarrhea. And that's just your body letting you know it can't handle it. So what we're saying here is if you can handle it, but if you can't, don't worry about it. So ideally with dairy foods, you want to choose some that are low in sugar and in fat. The biggest place you're going to find the sugar, which a lot of people don't recognize, are in the yogurts. They can be very high in sugar, so you want to read the labels on that. Also things like ice cream, kind of more the dessert type of dairy products. Another place to watch the fat is in cheeses. Typically, cheeses are made with whole milk or cream, and so that's all getting condensed into cheese. So you want to make sure you're choosing lower fat cheeses like part skim mozzarella, feta, goat cheese. Those are all some good examples there. Oh, and they also list here plain low-fat soy or almond milk. So those would be good options for somebody who does have a problem with regular dairy foods. Okay, so now let's move on to fruit. So you can have a small amount of fruit with your meal, or the fruit also makes a great snack. Frozen fruit is just as good for you as fresh, but you want to try to limit sweetened canned fruit, dried fruit, and juice. They are high in sugar, plus juice has very little fiber. So it doesn't fill you up the way whole fruit does. So here's some examples here: apples, apricots, blueberries. The ones that are kind of best for diabetes would be things like apples, and it's not listed here, but pears and berries are all really awesome types of fruits. All right, so now let's move on to drinks. You want to have a drink that has no or low calories with your meal. Some people don't want to drink with their meal, and that's okay too. But you want to choose those that are low in fat and sugar. So I think where a lot of people get into trouble is, and I always say, eat your calories, don't drink your calories. Things like a caramel macchiato or a soda, that sugar in there gets in your bloodstream very, very rapidly. And it's a lot of calories we don't even realize we're getting. And the same thing with juices. A lot of people think they're healthy, but they actually just have as much sugar, even though it is a natural sugar. It's still the way your body takes it in is very much like having a soda. So you really want to have that if you're going to have something like a juice. or any of those drinks, just the smallest amount and have it occasionally. And then we got some sweet foods. So sweets, and this is where a lot of those those added sugar calories are going to come in. And sugar is basically a carbohydrate. There's no vitamins or minerals or fiber or anything else in it. It's just strictly carbohydrate. So it's what in the nutrition world we call this empty calories. It's just calories and that's it. So we all enjoy these kind of things now and then, but the issue here, so we're not saying don't ever have this. That's why we say limit. They should be occasional treats, and they should be in moderation. A lot of people have a hard time controlling this because it does affect us where we always want more. And if you're finding that's a concern for you, there is a lot of resources, and I'd be happy to share those with people who need those. And then lastly, we've got fatty foods. And so this is probably one of the biggest ones that by limiting these foods and finding substitutes, you're probably going to drop that 500 extra calories a day. So it's pretty easy. So, and a lot of these foods also are not only high in calories, but they also that have kind of fat in it that will affect your blood cholesterol level. So you get a double whammy from these kind of foods. They're going to increase your caloric intake, and they're also going to affect your arteries. So limiting these is going to obviously do the opposite. Deep fried foods are one of probably the biggest ones we don't think about. Fatty meats. One thing I would say here is if you really are like things like bologna and salamis, maybe try something like like some lean ham or some turkey breast, things like that. And then whole milk instead of that, doing low fat or skim milk if you're a milk drinker. So just some suggestions there.
Okay, so Sharon just threw a lot of really important information at us, and maybe that feels overwhelming if you're not already eating this way. So we just want to highlight some of the challenges that you might encounter as you are switching some of your eating habits and maybe trying to adopt some of the tips and strategies that we talked about today. So in your participant guide on pages 9 and 10, we have how to cope with challenges. And so again, it can be challenging to shop, cook, and eat well, especially if this isn't something you're used to. So here are some of the common challenges people may encounter. So I'll just quickly go through the challenges on the left in this blue column. So a common one we hear is shopping this way costs too much. So you could maybe look for coupons or buy in bulk. Sharon mentioned, frozen veggies and fruit, that's just as great as fresh. And oftentimes frozen might be cheaper. And making sure you look for stuff that's in season. So that will definitely help with the price as well. Another challenge is that shopping and cooking this way takes up too much time. So it definitely is something to get used to. And some tips for that are to ask for help. So ask friends or family to help you get things done. Maybe get your kids involved. And then again, shopping on the weekend, shopping in bulk, and making a list to really plan ahead for what you need for the week so you can just get it all taken care of in one shopping trip. And then there are plenty of recipes out there that are fast, quick, healthy meals. So looking for some of those recipes that are maybe a little easier on your time constraints. And then I do like this tip that maybe you could prep some of it the day before, and then the next day you actually cook the meal. So it doesn't all have to happen in the same day. That's a really great tip as well. So another challenge is I don't like the way this food tastes. So yeah, it could take some getting used to if you're starting to cook different meals, but there are plenty of ways to kind of make it tastier for you. So playing around with different spices or herbs, They have the option here to choose cheeses that are strong tasting but low in fat, so like Parmesan or feta. I know sometimes people are weary of veggies because they can get really mushy and gross, or maybe that's something they remember from their childhood, but you can cook veggies and keep them really crisp and colorful, and it doesn't have to be this mush that you maybe think of. And then again, I mentioned the herbs and spices. There are a lot of really great low-fat dressings, or you could use lemon juice or vinegar, hot sauce, salsa. Some of those can kind of spice up the flavor for you. And then the last one here is it's unpleasant, boring, hard to shop, cook, or eat this way. So again, yeah, it will take some getting used to, but doing this with friends and family, that can make it fun. If you get the whole family involved and get them excited about it, that will really help. And then learning new cooking methods and recipes, you can do that from books, cookbooks, or articles or videos. There's so many resources out there that you could easily find. And then try new ingredients. We encourage you to do that because that kind of makes it fun just to try a new vegetable that you've never tried. Okay, so that's the list for the challenges for this session. And we encourage you to give those a try. And if you do, check them off, or if you have other ways to cope with those challenges, fill out the right-hand column and add those in there. And so that is the end of the participant guide and the resources there. So just to review what we just looked at. So there was the Make Your Plate on page 4, foods to choose, where Sharon walked us through the food groups on pages 5 to 7. And then we just discussed how to cope with challenges on pages 9 to 10. So those are resources that you'll have in your participant guide. You can always turn back to those. And we encourage you to do so. And so next we, of course, have our action plan. So again, we encourage you to take the time to do this. We'll ask you to share your action plan with us when you check in with us after watching the recording. And remember, when you're making your action plan, remember to keep it realistic, doable, specific, and flexible. So think about your action plan from the last session and how did that go for you? Were you able to accomplish it? If not, what might you need to kind of adapt or edit a little bit to make it more doable for you? All right, so that brings us to the end of the session. So we've talked about how eating well can help you prevent or delay type 2 diabetes. So we talked about how to eat well, how to build a healthy meal, and the items of each food group. And then our next lesson will be talking about tracking your food. So we'll introduce the food log and how that can be a really helpful part of your lifestyle change program. And so again, our reminder that to complete this session, you do need to have direct interaction with your lifestyle coach. So after you finish this recording, you write your action plan, schedule a call with your lifestyle coach to review the session and share your action plan and ask any questions that you might have. I know there was a lot in this lesson about the food groups and adopting a healthier lifestyle in terms of your cooking and eating. So we are always here as lifestyle coaches to help you brainstorm and strategize how to do that.
I think the one thing I'd like to add here is you know, as Angie said, there's a lot in this lesson, and changes to eating do not happen overnight. So please don't think that by next week you have to be eating this way perfectly. I would say just pick one thing that you're willing to try. Like maybe you're not having vegetables on your plate every night, those non-starchy vegetables, and maybe that would be an action plan. I'm going to have some non-starchy vegetables on my plate for dinner every night. Just start small and then build on that, because with time this will come. But the whole idea is just to chip away at it rather than trying to accomplish it all at once.
Yeah, thanks for that, Sharon. That's a really great point. And with that, that brings us to the end. So thank you guys, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.